Everyone seems to have this dream of hitting Immortal in Valorant, or at least a lot of our viewers do. And now, although Immortal is not radiant, and Immortal players still make a ton of mistakes, myself included, what I want to do today is load up one of the actual games that I played on stream and talk a bit about what it is that I notice when I compare my Immortal teammates to players in lower rank lobbies. Today we're going to be looking at some clips from my Immortal lobby, a Plat lobby, and a Silver lobby, and talk about some of the big differences that you'll see in their gameplay. Hopefully that will give you a good idea on what these differences are and how you can bring your game to the next level. Feel free to save your comments of, haha, that player's Immortal, I should be Radiant then, for a different video because you're not clever and you're missing the point of the entire video. The first round I'd like to highlight though is going to take place on a defensive half when I'm playing Brimstone. Oh, by the way, yes, that's me in the corner looking like Slim Shady, so for this video we're actually going to be covering up my face. Oh, also yes, I am playing Brimstone in an Immortal lobby, which is something that we could talk about briefly. Valorant is, at least at the time of this video, in a place where it doesn't really actually matter all that much what agent that you play. Despite Brimstone being placed pretty low on our tier list, he can still be a great pick for a couple of reasons. His molly is actually pretty useful, his smokes are really fast to place down, which means that you can be a bit more active in the game, and his ultimate can actually be used to get picks at times for his team. So although Brimstone isn't the best controller in the game, he can still be a decent pick at times, and in this game I wanted to play Brimstone, so I played Brimstone. I just figured this should be mentioned though, since a lot of people are always asking who they should play as, and my recommendation is generally whoever you want to play as. The other thing I want to comment on throughout this video though is that my goal isn't to talk about my own play and toot my own horn. I'm a pretty average player personally, and really what I want to talk about is the trends that I see within the game that I don't see often from viewing the lower ranked VOD reviews on the website. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that we have a new course over on the website showcasing some of the VOD reviews that our Radiant coaches have been doing for you guys? My goal is that I want to try and take specific things that I see in these VOD reviews and tailor more courses specifically towards the mistakes that these players make frequently. So if you're on board for any of that and want to hear what our Radiant players have to say about your games, be sure to head on over to SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Back to the video though, one of the key things that I want to point out at the start of this round is how our team plays at all of the choke points on Bind. Now there are two things I want to comment on here. The first one is that there's something going on at all 4 of the choke points on the map at the start of the round, which is really awesome for us because not only have we find ourselves a pick using the Sova drone out of hookah, but we also establish a ton of map control and basically make it impossible for the opposing team to win the round. That being said, it's also worth mentioning that taking full map control like this is not always a good idea, and what I do in showers is probably incredibly greedy. Just because I place down one smoke in showers does not mean I'm perfectly safe to just run up and grab this orb. There could be a lurk here entirely prepared to kill me, or if there's players here ready to fight over showers, this could easily result in me getting picked off, which would really nullify that pick that we got out of hookah. That being said, in matchmaking, it's incredibly common for teams to play more as a unit, and throughout the course of this game, I wasn't really seeing any showers presence, so I felt like it was pretty safe to greed a little bit for this orb. The thing I just want to talk about briefly here though is something I've talked about a lot in our previous videos, which is that Valorant is a lot about give and take, meaning that you only have so many players on your team, so if you're choosing to take something, you generally do want to be giving something up. So seeing as we have 3 players over on B, our team is playing very aggressively out of hookah, and it might not be a good idea for me to get aggressive on showers because I'm definitely alone in this endeavor. Nobody is here to help me, and generally doing things alone is a good way to get picked off. I think it's probably okay to smoke this off and help slow down any pushes that come into showers, but it's definitely a bit greedy for me to go for this orb. Part of the reason you'll see so much aggression on your team though at the start of the rounds is because in lower rated lobbies, many players won't show any aggression at all. They'll just walk up to showers or long or hookah for free, and it will result in your team having a very rough time defending the sites. In these situations, if your team is refusing to show any presence at the start of the round, sometimes as players, we may be forced to show some presence alone. Now, like I said, this isn't the optimal situation. We would much prefer to have a teammate with us who could help us with the aggression, but because nobody on our team is doing that, we need to be the one to step up and do that. And that's part of the reason why in this Immortal lobby, you see 4 players pushing up. And in this Plat 3 lobby from a replay submitted in the Discord, you see nobody pushing up. This is actually super crucial on a map like Breeze too, because the map is actually so big. Each team only has 5 players, and rotations can be really difficult if your team doesn't have map control. And even though their entire team seems to be in B main at the start of the round, his entire team makes the decision to rotate through the spawn rather than grabbing map control, and basically this allows the attackers to go wherever they want for free. So to recap on this topic, fighting for map control solo can be really punishable. However, if no one on your team is fighting for map control, it might be a good idea for you to do it. Oh, and by the way, Snow actually loses this round that we are talking about because the enemy team rotates to A for free. So if that doesn't say enough. Now moving on, one thing that pains me to say that has improved from the lower ranks to Immortal is trading teammates. Now, we all have those games where it feels like our teammates just don't know how to trade properly, but there were actually a few times after reviewing this game where I noticed how well my teammates actually played off of me, which is actually super cool to see. Now, this round you're seeing on screen right now is a really good example of why it's so important to trade your teammates and what it looks like when it's done correctly. Notice how in this 2v2, the Sage and I both stay together, and because of this, when we end up taking a gunfight, I'm actually able to find the kill onto the Cypher, but the enemy Skye is going to trade me out, but my Sage is going to trade out the Skye. This is such a good example of what trading looks like from actually both ends. If we misplayed this even slightly, the enemy team would have ended up winning this situation, but because the Sage and I communicated closely and we were both playing together, we were able to clutch out this unlikely round. This was actually a huge round from the Sage, as you'll see that she actually picked up 3 kills in the round prior to the res on me, once again trading out some really crucial kills. This sort of brings us to the subtopic for the video too, which is that every player in this rank seemingly is able to clutch up if you give them the chance. You don't hit Immortal by having terrible aim or zero game sense. Even if it feels like somebody is completely lost at the time in your matches, most of these players at least have some sort of idea of how to play the game, and if you give them the chance, they will punish you for your mistakes. Most of the time, that is. Now take a look at this other viewer submitted round from a bronze to silver lobby where they misplay a 2v2 pretty poorly. This is currently a bonus round for his team, and we all know that when you choke on a bonus round, everyone just says good bonus and moves along to not hurt the dynamic of the team, but it kind of is a bummer to lose close rounds like this. And as we talked about in the Immortal example, in 2v2s it's generally important to stay together so that you and your teammate can play off of each other. But in this example, Sero does the exact opposite. He walls his teammate off from him, so now not only will he never be able to help the Killjoy, but the enemy Jett doesn't actually have to worry about exposing herself when peeking his teammate from maze. Notice how different both of these 2v2s look between the Immortal game and the Silver game. Now, of course, it's not mind-blowing that Immortal players would play a situation better than Silver players, but what I want you to notice is why what the Immortal players did was better, and how you cannot make this mistake in the future. What the Immortal players did was better because it allowed them to abuse their numbers and try to create situations where they can have 2v1 engagements to minimize the risk of taking 1v1s. What the Silver players did is they tried to take 1v1s and stall out the timer, and this resulted in them losing. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about that Immortal players don't do is complain about their teammates. Just kidding, we definitely still do that.
Spike planted.
Why do they take so long to get here, dude? It is sort of along those lines though. One of the more refreshing things to experience playing in slightly higher rated lobbies is that players do communicate a bit more. Now, don't get me wrong, these aren't like top tier level comms, but if you take a listen to this round, then you'll notice there are things being called out and there are things being heard. We actually have a really solid video from Dr. Zora that covers what good comms look like from analyzing pro players, but in this round, the big thing that I want you to notice is just how players are calling out what they see. Take a listen to this round because it has some decent comms in it and also a kind of funny moment.
Dropping back. He's already on side B.
Could go spawn.
Could go our spawn, you said.
One more.
One
more
enemy remaining.
She's in our spawn, what the fuck?
Yeah, he's in our spawn.
Down B.
GG's. I'm actually gonna hard throw.
You're
Why?
right click.
I'm not safe in my own spawn.
Now, although our Jett did die to the player in spawn, at least he knew there was a player in spawn, which is a blessing that you don't always get in your games. Communication is one of the most solid things to improve upon because your comms can always be helpful for your team. Even if you're having a bad aim day, and even if you're making some mistakes, at least if you're communicating effectively, you can always make sure to have good comms. This is something that you have direct control over. You can't control your ping, you can't control your aim all the time, but what you can control is what you say and the information you provide to your team. And that's why you'll see as you climb in ranks, communication becomes a lot more common. The days of queuing into a game and not saying a word are for the most part going away. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still definitely players who don't say a word and we all hate those players. But it's a lot more common to have teams that communicate in Immortal, and it's for good reason. Comms win games. Thank you all for watching today, and if this video was helpful, feel free to check out some of our other VOD reviews from viewer-submitted games on our website. We've received really good feedback on these reviews so far, and many of you have been saying that it's by far the best way to learn in the game, so we really appreciate that you all like them so much. As always though, my name is King, and we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.